Friends, today we are going to talk about a family that has practically redefined the very meaning of wealth. We always say, oh, for money, but this family is the one that both built and swims in that pool. Their fortune exceeding that of many banks, scattered across chateaus, art pieces, centuries-old vineyards, and a corporate web spread like a spider across the world, has become so complex that no one, even today, can give a clear figure. I am sure they themselves have stopped counting. While some mention numbers around $400 billion, those who believe the legend talk about trillions. But one thing is certain: the Rothschilds' name is synonymous with power, finance, money, intrigue, and blood. The Rothschilds' deep, intricate story is allegedly rooted in a German lineage extending back to the 14th century. The family took its name from the Rothschild, red shield sign, located on their house in Frankfurt. Prior to the 18th century, particularly Jews in Europe, due to religious restrictions, were often unable to own land, causing them to specialize in trade and money lending, goldsmithing, or banking. This laid the most fundamental groundwork for the Rothschild family's future financial expertise. 1. The starting point: the clever goldsmith in Frankfurt, late 18th century. This massive family began modestly in the late 18th century in the German city of Frankfurt. Mayer Amschel Rothschild first worked as a banker and later as a goldsmith. However, he was not just a merchant who exchanged currency. He was a genius who first cracked the rules of the money game. In that era, the activity of Jewish families in finance and trade across the world and Europe was a double-edged sword. On one hand, they pursued opportunities to accumulate money, while on the other, when political landscapes shifted, which happened very frequently during that period, there was the danger of having all the family's assets confiscated or even being expelled from their locations by powerful forces. Mayer was well aware of this and built his strategy upon this path, holding on to money and dividing the risk across regions. 2. The Five Arrows: establishing the intercontinental network of the dynasty. Mayer's genius was to brilliantly divide his empire equally among his 5 sons, dispatching them to the 5 great financial and monetary centers of Europe as key locations. This was akin to sending his commanders to the most critical fronts during wartime. These 5 brothers went down in history as the 5 Arrows, Cinque Frecce, and successfully became the main symbol of the family's coat of arms. Their motto was Concordia, Integritas, Industria, Harmony, Integrity, Industry. Nathan Mayer Rothschild to London, the most influential. James Mayer Rothschild to Paris, the Great Baron. Solomon Mayer Rothschild to Vienna. Karl Mayer Rothschild to Naples. Amschel Mayer Rothschild remained in Frankfurt with his father. This distribution created a perfect communication network supported by rapid mounted couriers, ensuring instant news flow. A development in London was immediately known by the brothers in Paris, Naples, and Vienna within hours. In finance, especially during wartime, accurate information is more valuable than money. The Rothschilds were the living proof of this fact from that time onward. The rules Mayer established became the family's lifeblood. Businesses were to be managed exclusively by family members. The inheritance was never to be divided, and wealth was to be kept within the family, usually among cousins, by encouraging arranged marriages, something we also saw in most historical monarchies, where your cousin was both your business partner and relative. While it might seem repulsive when considered, this method ensured the wealth remained in the hands of a single dynasty for hundreds of years. 3. War and speculation: Nathan's Waterloo Gambit, early 19th century. The role of wars in the Rothschilds' ascension to the top is undisputably massive. The Napoleonic Wars created a colossal need for governments to borrow, and the Rothschilds became the source of this borrowing. The most famous example is the Battle of Waterloo. The legend goes like this. Nathan Rothschild learned of Wellington's defeat of Napoleon long before the official news reached London. He allegedly created a financial panic on the stock exchange by appearing to sell all his British government bonds. Other investors, believing Britain had lost the war, panicked and sold their bonds one by one. When bond prices bottomed out, Nathan secretly bought an incredible amount of bonds. When the definitive news of victory arrived, bond prices soared to their highest point, and Nathan earned a tremendous fortune that night. Historians, however, offer a slightly more realistic account. Nathan certainly had intelligence everywhere that provided early notice, but the real reason for his success was not speculation, but long-term, systematic, and disciplined trading. Nathan had been the trusted financier for the British government for many years, simplifying their borrowing. After the Battle of Waterloo, foreseeing that confidence in Britain would rise, he deliberately bought the bonds at a high price. His goal was not a short-term gain, but to capitalize on the inevitable bond value increase after the war. By waiting 2 years, he achieved a massive 50% profit when he offered his bonds for sale. This was a victory of strategic patience and a well-developed knowledge of the market. 4. Who did they lend to? Diplomacy, credit, and influence. The Rothschilds strategically distributed their risks by not being tied to a single state, remaining active on every front. The strategy was always the same: credits, bond transactions, fast information, quick cash flow, and trust with pro-government political actors. Great Britain. Nathan's London branch played the most influential and important role in the British government's borrowing and bond distribution throughout the greater part of the 19th century. European monarchies, the Habsburg monarchy through the Vienna branch, and the French governments through the Paris branch, consistently turned to Rothschild capital. The Unification of Italy. James de Rothschild provided credit to the Piedmont, Savoy regimes, Cavour, at a time when no one was willing to lend, financially supporting Italy's unification project. Cavour later tried to escape Rothschild influence. In response, James quietly sold off the Piedmont government bonds he held, crashing the market. The only way to find common ground again was to ask them for credit once more. This was the philosophy. It's just business, nothing personal. Egypt and the Ottoman Empire. The Rothschilds' branches scattered across the world played the most important role in the foreign borrowing and investment markets of Egypt and the Ottoman Empire in the 19th century. These financial transactions became intertwined with diplomatic decisions, establishing regional balances. Instead of pitting states against each other, the Rothschilds strengthened the hand of specific individuals with their credits and bond trading. Selling a country's bonds in mass could instantly shatter global confidence in that country and decisively increase their bargaining power. V. Growing the wealth, from war to industry. The Rothschilds realized early on that the biggest money wouldn't just come from government loans. The 19th century was a crucial time for the Industrial Revolution and infrastructure projects. The Rothschilds adapted to this change very quickly. Infrastructure and industry. They made huge financial investments in projects such as railroads, mining, the chemical industry, and ports. Even in projects that changed the scale of global trade, like the Suez Canal, they had a touch. While war revenues provided short-term gains, industry and infrastructure investments guaranteed that the wealth would continue for a lifetime. Luxury consumption. Alongside all this monetary power, they purchased the failing mansions and chateaux of French and Austrian aristocrats, acquiring the luxury to produce the world's most prestigious wines, such as Chateau Lafite. It is said that during this period, no oil baron, industrialist, or merchant could compete with the Rothschilds' fortune. VI. The modern era. Divisions, tragedies, and reunification. The 20th century was quite difficult for the Rothschilds. 2 world wars, the Holocaust, and the rise of nation-states caused massive losses,
especially in the German and Austrian branches. The center of gravity shifted, lost between London and Paris, and national money markets gained strength. However, over the last 20 years, the family has made great efforts to restore Mayors' unity. Led by David Rothschild, the project began to consolidate the French and English branches under a single holding company, Concordia, Harmony. Today, the business continues in financial advisory, wealth management, though not as much as before, and investment banking. Tragic events like the suspicious death of Amschel Mayor James Rothschild in 1996 brought about internal disputes and external speculation. However, despite all the difficulties, the family brought back the old system, maintaining their financial discipline.
It is still impossible to know the exact total net worth of the Rothschild dynasty as of 2025. However, we can see the family's financial power in two concrete areas. Estimated total fortune. The most widely accepted estimate for the total fortune, distributed among the hundreds of family members, chateaus, art collections, and private companies, is thought to be in the range of approximately $350 to $400 billion. This figure belongs to the entire dynasty, not a single individual. Managed institutional assets. The assets managed by the large financial groups under the family's control are enormous. Edmund de Rothschild Group in Switzerland. This private banking group currently manages assets exceeding 184 billion Swiss francs. Rothschild & Co. in London and Paris. The investment banking and wealth management arm manages portfolios and funds totaling tens of billions of euros, approximately 35 billion. These figures show us that the Rothschilds' power does not come from a single peak name on a Forbes list, but from strategic investments, systematic operation, and institutional structures that span hundreds of years.